Britain's biggest problems aren't improving, they're actually getting worse. And Rachel Reeves' next budget is already being described as brutal. Not because she's going to be, or she wants to be particularly tough, but because the government is running out of room. Financially speaking, politically speaking, and strategically speaking as well. At the same time, the people who actually do a good job at keeping this country running, the taxpayers, the skilled workers, the doctors, the business owners, all of which can include billionaires and millionaires, are running away. They're running away in record numbers. Why? Well, not because they have always hated Britain, but because Britain now hates them. It's becoming more expensive, they're getting taxed more, and it's less rewarding. Less rewarding for the very people who actually put in the work. There's no incentives anymore. Instead, they actually get punished for doing well. And Labour's response is, of course, spend more, tax more, and just pretend that the money will magically appear. Let's not even consider Green's plans. Well, actually, we will get onto that one in just a bit. It's kind of crazy. Let's start with the obvious. Labour is spending money at a level the country simply cannot sustain. And they're doing it across absolutely everything. Just a few examples. First, they froze NHS prescription charges. This obviously made for a very nice headline, but it does cost around £18 million a year in lost revenue. And this is at a time when the NHS is already running about a £12 billion black hole in its day-to-day budget. So this feels more like a little plaster on a system that needs a whole lot of change. Also, people aren't happy about this when there's people that are literally freezing with the energy prices. And hey, most people don't even pay for prescriptions. I think it comes out at about 89% of prescriptions in the UK aren't actually being paid for by the person. Second, they expanded welfare once again. The universal credit uplift adds about £4 billion of extra cost by 2029. This is on top of a system where 53% of households already receive more from the state than they actually contribute. 53%. That is mathematically impossible to sustain. And this is when the tax base is shrinking. I did a whole video actually on the state of the welfare state, so I'll leave that linked somewhere on the screen up here or up here if you do want to check that out and give that a listen. Third, Labour wants to increase payouts for failed asylum seekers to voluntarily return home, which doesn't really make sense when you think about it. We already give £3,000. Now they want to go even higher, potentially to £7,000 for families. So this just means that the taxpayers are paying even more to encourage people to leave after they've already arrived. And for a lot of people, they probably shouldn't be here.
I've already asked my officials to pilot a small programme where we offer more than what we currently do for a period, just to see how that changes behaviour.
25,000, that sort of money.
Haven't alighted upon the full sums involved yet, but I am willing to consider, a big increase on what we currently pay. And that is because for each asylum seeker in the country, it's £30,000 per individual per year. So it's a big sum of money. And if we can persuade people to return to their home country, with a cash payment, that is often better value for the taxpayer. I know it sticks in the craw of many people and they don't like it, but it is value for money. It does work, and a voluntary return is often the very best way to get people to return to their home country as quickly as possible.
Oh, by the way, actually, whilst we're on this topic, did you know that illegal immigrants who are waiting for deportation are getting many benefits that British people, British citizens, simply don't get? This includes private maths tutors, exercise classes, private and on-call GPs, IT lessons, art lessons, and so on. And this was actually found from a private investigation that The Sun ran on UK removal centres. And wait for this, it's also been revealed that over £200,000 was spent on vapes for migrants at an immigration removal centre over a 1-year period. Vapes. Fourth, Labour has injected a staggering £22 billion per year extra into the NHS day-to-day spending, one of the biggest increases in modern history, and the IFS has already warned it's unaffordable without productivity gains that never materialise. Lastly, instead of looking for efficiencies, Labour have increased civil service roles. For example, At least 500 diversity officers are being employed by the government at taxpayers' expense to enforce diversity, equality, and inclusion policies. That's where the taxpayers' money is going. Now let's talk about three of the biggest, most ideological examples. Net zero and clean energy subsidies. These policies sound great, but they're costing tens of billions every year. The UK now has the largest industrial electricity prices in the world, and even the government themselves admits that subsidised wind and solar have created only 40,000 jobs at an estimated cost of more than 200,000 per job. These policies push energy-intensive manufacturers out of the country. As simple as that. Destroying more jobs than they create, while loading the cost to who? The taxpayers, of course. Next, refugee and asylum support. £2.8 billion of the aid budget is being spent within the UK on asylum processing, hotel accommodation and refugee support. That's 1/5 of the entire aid budget. And Labour has not announced any plan to offset or reduce this, of course. It's simply baked into the system, on top of the rise in welfare, rise in housing benefits, rise in legal costs and rise in asylum caseload. Then there's affordable housing. Labour allocated £5.5 billion next year as part of a massive £39 billion housing programme. And here's the uncomfortable question. In the UK, we aren't breeding quick enough to have a housing crisis. So what's going on? The answer becomes obvious once you look at the migration figures. Housing, public services, welfare, schools are all being scaled up to meet the demand created entirely through immigration. Not policy, not domestic population. Put all of this together and what does it tell you? Well, it tells you that Labour's instinct is always the same. Spend more, borrow more, expand the state, grow the welfare bill, create more dependency, and pay for it all by squeezing the same shrinking group of taxpayers who already fund everything. But here's the problem. The very people that they need to fund all this, the skilled workers, the high earners, the innovators, the taxpayers, are leaving. They are leaving. They are fleeing the UK in record numbers. And that brings us to the core of the issue. The tax base is collapsing. Because of all this spending on all of these commitments, all of these ideological projects, if you will, they only work if the UK still has a large, productive, high-earning tax base to actually pay for those things. But that's the part that nobody in government wants to talk about. The UK tax base is tiny, it's fragile, and, more worryingly, it's shrinking. So let me spell this out for you. The top 1% already pay around 30% of all income tax. The top 10% pay nearly 60%. And over half of households, like I said earlier, receive more from the state than they actually contribute. But here's the trouble that they are running into. You can't squeeze the people who just aren't here. And the people that they rely on to fund everything are the exact same people who are now leaving. And we're not just talking about millionaires here. We're also talking about normal professionals earning between 60, 80, 100k, the traditional middle class. These are people who just work damn hard, honestly. They've given a lot of their time to build a business or work multiple jobs even. These are often the people working a 9 to 5 and then spending their mornings, their evenings, their weekends, working even harder to build, a side business or taking on a second or third job. These people no longer feel that they can live a normal life in Britain. Housing is unaffordable, childcare is unaffordable, energy bills are just simply through the roof, and taxes are among the highest in the developed world. The message from politicians is basically pay more, get less, and don't complain. And people can do the maths themselves. They look at places like Australia, the US, Dubai, and think lower taxes, higher pay, better quality of life, a government that actually wants skilled workers and will, benefit those workers. So it's just not a difficult decision for people anymore. And Labour is doubling down on the same policies that drove them away. Then there's the Greens. The Greens. They are literally building a whole campaign, not around saving the environment, can you believe it, but instead taxing the rich. They are obsessed with taxing the people that they think are rich and don't deserve to be rich. How does that make sense? It's not fair. Okay, so the richer people pay more taxes, they already do, but why make it so that you're punishing people for building things? That then creates a society where there is no incentive to work for things. And what happens then? Well, two things. People stop trying. Then you get socialism. We all know how that one works. And the people who actually build things and add to their economy leave. So what? You force out these people and then what do? You begin going after the next in line. You literally drive everyone paying their taxes either out of the country or into poverty. Then you've got a society left of people who either don't add anything because they don't want to, they can't be bothered, or they can't. That does not sound like a good society to me. I actually saw a fantastic post on X. It says Britain has 160 billionaires, total wealth of about £680 billion, annual public spending 1.3 trillion. So if the Treasury confiscated 100% of billionaire wealth tomorrow, it would cover public spending for roughly 6 months. The runway to socialism's paradise is a very short one. Anyway, the current Labour moves and the Greens' plans, if they were to get in the future, are just causing British people to leave in record numbers, and it's the productive ones. I think recent data shows that 257,000 British-born citizens left the UK in 2024. That's more than 3 times the old estimate of around 80,000 a year. Last year as well, an estimated 16,000 millionaires left the UK, more than any other country in the world. Why is this? I think it's very simple. Anyway, France did a similar thing where they introduced a 75% tax on high earners. 75%. Within 2 years, the wealthy obviously fled to where they're treated better. And then France quietly just scrapped the policy because they knew that they couldn't carry on with that. Britain is now doing the same thing. These are the people who pay into the system far more than they ever take out. We need people like that to make the economy run. These are the people Labour wants to fund the massive welfare state that keeps expanding. And they're the ones saying, well, why am I staying in a country that punishes hard work when I can just have a better life elsewhere? It's a very good question to ask. All of this is happening while we are replacing these people with migrants. Okay, fine. But are these replacing the economy loss? The answer is often no. There are some skilled workers that come into the country legally and they add to the economy. Doctors, engineers, etc., nurses, these type of people. And this is great. This is literally the point in immigration. We should have this. But there's also a lot of lower skilled individuals who are simply coming in and using the state. So we should very much care about Britain's brain drain. And that's what people are calling it, Britain's brain drain. A country's economy is only ever as strong as the very people that actually power it. If the most productive workers leave, then a few things happen. GDP falls, innovation slows, investment dries up, and growth just flatlines. And the scary thing is that this is already happening. Britain's productivity has been stagnant for, over a decade. If the people who pay the most tax leave, then the burden just shifts downwards. That's all that happens. Ordinary workers, struggling families, small businesses, they become the new target for tax rises because someone has to pay for this. And because the maths doesn't change, you need money to run a country. I feel like I'm saying the most basic things, but it's happening. If you drive away the people with the money, then you start squeezing the people who are left because you need someone. The UK is slowly falling apart and this just isn't sustainable. Anyway, I feel like I'm rambling now, so thank you for watching. If you're interested, we actually do send out a weekly newsletter. It's completely free and the link to sign up is in the description below. I'll see you next time.